Hello, welcome back. Welcome back to the PPM Summit. So now we are going to our first panel discussion of the day. The topic is how did the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic influence digital tools implementation? So we have three speakers who will be joining me. So we have Salman, whom you already know from his presentation that he just finished. And let me present you the two other speakers. So we have Martine Mazzetti. Martine can be called an experienced drug developer after 3 decades in pharma, has been part of more than development of more than 200 molecules. She has a good number of patients who have been benefited, and these products have been successful in the market. She has worked with Baxter, Nestle, Roche, AstraZeneca, and many more in various capacities, like in regulatory affairs, in project and portfolio leadership roles. And currently, she's head of project leadership at VectivBio. Let me introduce you Simon Dodds. So Simon is an experienced international project and portfolio leader, um, successful risk and continuity manager, trusted strategic advisor, and pragmatic problem solver. He translates the complex into understandable and actionable. Fascinated by how lessons from history and psychology can be applied to everyday life. So I'm really curious about the responses and the feedback that we'll receive from the speakers on this very exciting topic, because we are into the pandemic and we really want to know what is influencing the implementation of digital tools. And if you have questions, so I already have a list of questions that I will be asking the panel, but you as audience can feel free to send questions through the chat, and I will add it towards the end after the prepared questions. So the first question for the panel: how did COVID-19 influence projects in your organization? So let me start with Salman.
Thank you, Mithun. So I would put into two buckets. So one which put extra challenge, which is more like, as we were talking in my presentation, these drug development programs and how it added to more complexity, and then we had to mitigate risk and then adopt ourselves. But then the second bucket I would add, which is more like have a positive impact, which is accelerate our digital journey. So the different tools and techniques which we were anticipating internally that would come in 1 year time, 18 months time, so all that got accelerated, and that also helped to have a buy-in internally. So that's the positive impact, because we always talk about negative impact of COVID. So I wanted to bring a positive dimension here. Usually people are not very much into buy-in to those tools and techniques, more over the senior guys, but this forced environment helped to accelerate that journey, but also increase the buy-in from my perspective, Mithun.
Excellent. Simon, would you like to add your thoughts on this question?
Certainly, thank you. For just to clarify, for the portfolio work that the organizations that I work with are more actively involved with is not the development of product itself, but rather the supporting capability building projects or molecule enabling, or there's lots of different names for it. And the number of factors that the pandemic has had on this particular type of work is, well, firstly, it's led to a lot of delays because people at first couldn't work as quickly as they could before. And as Salman said, it has forced the situation where people have to look at digital tools in the way that it has to be. We've seen it in all stages of the industry and even outside of work. Anyone here who has school-aged children knows all too well how things are working out for them. What I think has also happened is that it has in a way, forced people to think their prioritization a lot better and a lot more rigorously, because in the past, in many industries, particularly healthcare industries, where, let's face it, there is a lot of money available, especially for the bigger companies, prioritization doesn't really exist in many cases. The idea is that let's just do everything, and suddenly it's very clear, no, you can't. So it's forced people to rethink things a lot better, be more fully aware of the constraints in which they truly are operating, and to take digitalization seriously.
Thank you, Simon. Absolutely agree. It has pushed us to do go so fast. The pandemic in the use of digital tools, and not only in the professional world, but also in the personal world. Martine, would you like to add your thoughts to this question?
Yes, thank you very much. I think I fully agree with Salman and Simon that we had an acceleration of using digital tools, which was due to the external pressure. So the companies, the hospitals, and the physician didn't have choice, because we weren't allowed to work directly with us. So for us, as we were starting to prepare a phase 3 trial just in the start of the COVID, I think this acceleration posed quite a challenge, because instead of doing site visits, we had to do it remotely. As a small organization, we had to turn around in quite quickly. And of course, we faced delays, but we had so much of a learning how we virtually work together, how we exchange virtually together with tools. As you said, Simon, I think prioritization of programs, but also prioritization of activities. How do you work with? And that was also something which we had to implement quickly. So at the end, I would just say that even the physicians who were very reluctant to do televisits and use digital tools changed their mind. And I think that's a game changer for the future when COVID is away, because that's something which I think if we wouldn't have COVID, it would have taken decades to convince them to do that. And we'll see what happens after, but I think that's a big change.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And along with this, I saw some very interesting influences, like a few of the teams of on a certain project, they were completely asked to abandon their project, and they found creative ideas to use up that time to produce new prototypes and new proof of concepts on topics which we never thought of. So I think it is tough. It has pushed us, but if you have the right mindset, you can always make a good result out of the time. With that, we move to the next question. What did you do to keep running existing projects or started new projects during COVID-19? So Salman, would you like to start?
Sure, happy to do that. So I think the first thing was to somehow, as you were saying, Bithan, it's to see that how to reimagine in a way, or how to evolve based on the current circumstances, which means that okay, first step was to align on the expectation, so it won't be running as we were running before. So there is that, and we don't need, we should not underestimate that, because people do not accept the reality. Some takes 1 month, some can take 6 months or 1 year into that. So that was the stage one, to have this realization on the impact that the things won't be running as it was running before. Then the second stage was that how we can minimize the impact or change the direction. And since I represent UCB here, so we have drug development, but also we have a commercial organization, because we have assets in market there. So you have your whole workforce which were going face to face to sell your drug, and now for 1 year they may not have any face to face contact with any healthcare provider. So then you have to really rethink what will be the working model for them to operate in this year or 18 months. But then the question would come also, what would be the working model afterwards? If those things can work remotely, then do you really need to go back to the full face-to-face afterwards? So this kind of more like a mid and long term questions came up, and that is your second part of the question. So this is the work which we are starting now, is to think what will happen after 6 months now or 1 year, when hopefully this crisis is not as strong as it is now. Do we continue, or do we go back before COVID? Do we continue what we were doing in last 1 year, or there will be more like a hybrid model, and the projects and the working mechanisms or the approach towards commercialization or drug development would be adopted based on that?
Very interesting. Thank you, Salman. I really like the way of rethinking the idea and really changing the working model and thinking also long term, like, okay, what can be changed. And I know that in my organization, we have an informal announcement that even after the COVID, we might be from something around 60 to 70% working from home. So that's a major change. It means we'll be moving into a flex office, and we might be working only 30% of the time in office, which is a major change to the way we see work. So, Simon, would you like to add your ideas to this question?
Sure, and yeah, absolutely. The big point that you had there, Salman, about at first thinking, okay, this is just temporary. Let's just wait until this is over. And, well, it's still not over. And the idea that you just could wait is, well, fatal. That was getting over this in the beginning was quite key. Instead of the whole idea, let's wait until things are normal. No, for now this is normal. Deal with it effectively was the main lesson that had to be brought out. How can you get people to keep working together, and how do you, despite not being physically together anymore, how to keep people engaged, because isolation plus all the problems that we're all personally dealing with, they all have their toll on this. So, and how can you keep these interactions working in a certain way? And actually, through all this, I'm saying that the project work is becoming a lot more resilient, because this whole idea is that despite everything that's going on, people are realizing actually they have more control over the situation than they think, and really being able to capitalize on that. So that should set people up to be more flexible in the future. And the other point in terms of how to facilitate interactions is, so the communication tools and collaboration tools that people use is key. And I think there's been a bit of a transition in the usage of that here, because in the past, many of these tools that we used, in some cases, weren't really actually needed in a way. It was something to experiment with. It was a bit of a toy. Sure, it has its uses in some areas, but in many cases, they were used when they didn't really need to be. You just needed to talk and meet properly. But now that people have to rely solely on these types of tools, this makes people a lot more sensitive to how these tools actually work, and how much more people are willing to actually play with systems in the future. So this should set up people to be a lot more mature in that aspect as well, as the situation progresses.
Amazing. I really like this fact you mentioned, that how people were positively surprised by the fact that things were more in control than they expected. And I think, yeah, we have to also remember these positive experiences from this environment. So, Martine, can you please add your experiences and thoughts on this?
Yeah, I will do so. And it's really hard, because Salman and Simon covered it more or less quite extensively. So I will try to find a little piece for me to add on the discussion. And I think one thing is the amazingness of people being able to adapt. I think suddenly we were asked to work differently from one day to the other, and we were all surprised that it decently worked. The disruption in the work we were doing, at least what I realized, was minimal. So I think stretching the ability of people to do new things is something we might have not done enough before, because they were able to cope. And then I would like to go back what Antonio said. I think we are a profession in crisis. We are a profession who has to reinvent itself. So I think having an external pressure to oblige us to think differently is maybe the right thing for project management to happen now, because you have seen the project management book going from, what is this, 62 pages to hundreds. I think we have to cut back to what's really needed, the why. I think Salman nicely illustrate that, what is really needed, how we need to work, and get all the fat out of that big system to be there to create benefit, in our case for patients, and that get straight to there. So I think that for me it's a positive spin. The negative spin, I think we have to be honest. Digital tool fatigue is existing. I think as much as people don't go back to work in the same way, I realize in my teams there's a starving for connectivity and human relation. And the more the thing are lingering, the more I think the intrinsic motivation which comes to the relation of people, the informal discussion to broaden your horizon is disappearing. So how we compensate for that, I think, is also a challenge. And that's it from my end.
Thank you, Martine. Excellent. Let's move to the next question. So how do you see future of project in post-COVID era? Salman, would you like to start?
Absolutely. I would like to think more positive dimension, Mithun, here, and I think that in my experience, when you are talking 1 year before or 18 months before, terms like risk management, scenario planning, sensitivity analysis, extreme scenarios, you had quite some pushback from your team. They were seen as theoretical concepts, right? It's more like to maintain your slides or your Excel files, and then you use it once in 6 months, once in 1 year as part of the process. But people were not really believing that these things are helpful because it's, as I said, it's theoretical. So I think the last 12 months and now maybe 18 months, they have created more acceptance for these kind of discussions. Because what matters, it's really the discussion and buy-in rather the ultimate outcome, right? If you don't use the output, then there is no use of that. So my hope and I have a belief that this will create more buy-in towards the stakeholders, whether you can go really up to the top where people would start thinking, or at least be able to spend time on those extreme things. What if there is something comes that can hold you for working for 3 months? You have to reimagine your working model, how we need to adopt that. So I think there will be that flexibility and willingness to talk about those concepts which seem very theoretical for a set of group or which is not a small group.
Excellent. Thank you, Salman. I absolutely agree. And I remember a lot of my program steering committee meetings where for months the risk matrix would be presented. But I mean, it's okay. They would just say, okay, yes, we have this risk, but okay, so what? Okay, it's business as usual. But I think now it's very different, and it's a positive sign indeed. Simon, would you like to continue on these thoughts?
Yeah. Okay. So when you're talking about risk, okay, I've got to say a few things about that. It's with in the years before COVID, when I was doing a lot of risk management work, say my previous employer at Roche, in many areas it was considered very much a box ticking exercise, more to say, yes, I've done it, leave me alone, but rather to actually use it. But interactions now through my colleagues at Arcondis and my clients, they're seeing things very, very differently. It's saying, okay, no, this isn't just a theoretical exercise. It's not something just to keep a few people happy. This is system relevant in terms of being able to survive in the future, because everyone's just gone through a disruption and everyone knows what it looks like now. And any types of project work should in some way have contingencies in place. So, okay, so for this project, if it's going to work, and then, okay, what happens if things go wrong with the project along the way? But then, of course, what are the consequences of the project simply not being needed or not falling away, which is textbook portfolio management stuff, which we all know that this is basic, but in many areas, these are questions that are simply weren't asked before. A decision was made, okay, start a project, off you go. And it was just assumed one day it will be finished and everything will be fine. And it's been a very rude awakening for many people. And I think there's a lot to be learned from that. The other thing that I see in the future with this is, due to the nature of the way that we've all had to work now on this in this past year, is compartmentalization, I see. So a very clear separation I'm seeing between actual project work and operational regular business work. In the past, this type of thing was mixed together quite a lot, and not always to the benefit of either. And I'm seeing that this clear recognition that there is running the business, and then there are discrete activities that are done to improve the running of the business. And this is getting the proper recognition that it needs now, which I think is for project work, for program work, for portfolio work in the future. I see that only as a positive.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm so happy about that this kind of distinction is now more accepted and more becoming the normal, and absolutely great to hear about that. So Martine, would you like to add your ideas on this?
Yeah, I think I agree with Simon, having worked at Roche too. I remember the stick block exercises. I think we spent hours on that, and we're just asking ourselves, what are we doing here? But I think with the system being stressed, it results in focusing on the essential. And as Simon and Simon said, I think we need to do the things which are important and do it clearly. So clear responsibility, clear ways of working. I think that's things which might emerge from the crisis, because we cannot have these gray zones too much anymore, because we cannot afford them and we cannot manage them virtually. So might be a good thing. I think the danger is always to split to the other extreme, to create silos, and I think that's what we have to watch out. So I think coming back to a good balance, that's my hope, and benefiting from the learnings we had in a system which was stressed by external imperatives like COVID and virtual way of working. Taking the best out of it would be my hope, and leave the worst away. I think maybe we have a chance here.
Thank you, Martine. Great responses. And let me move to the next question. So we have a large number of remote teams now due to COVID. So how do you remove friction or inefficiencies that might arise in this era? Or how can technology help? I think it's a bit related to what we already discussed, but I would let you share your thoughts. So let me go in a different order. So Martine, would you like to start this time?
Thank you. At least good. I think if you speak about inefficiency and difficulty of remote working, I think one learning we had is to get better in communication, and to get better and more focused into how and what we communicate. And I think if you want to rely on better ways of working, I think we will have to rely on tools like whatever SharePoint, and bring people to use platforms in the best way. I think that's one learning. In the other way, I think we're very focused when we have Zoom meetings, because you have an hour, and then of course it cuts. I think the time pressure helps to concentrate too, because otherwise you could have a meeting to run 3 or 4 hours longer than you expected. Simon is nodding. I think you remember those ones, and you just turn in circles. So by having just an hour and putting it to a conclusion and making sure you communicate your conclusion, I think that's helping. But of course, I think we all experience that we have to work more, because we have to communicate more with more people. And we're missing the coffee, we're missing the lunch, we're missing anything which is a smooth and informal communication in this world. So we have to compensate for that in a structured way. So I think what I observe with my teams is that the engagement is high, the communication in the meetings might be more focused and clear, but we need more of it. And we need to make sure that we have not too many people in a Zoom team. So if you have 10, 11, I think, forget it. So you need also to make sure you organize yourself. But I stop here. Salman and Salman have plenty of more to build.
Thank you, Martine. And Simon, would you like to continue?
Yeah, absolutely. The main idea is the main thing is to keep people connected in some way. If all of the normal social interactions are gone, and yeah, simply bringing together 60 people and calling it a social event is with its limits. I'm sure we all had quite a few virtual Christmas parties at the end of last year, and with varying degrees of success. But it was when you got the numbers small, then it worked. Some things that just among ourselves at Arcondis, which has worked well, not just within a project team, but within the organization as well. It can be applied to any group, really, is the idea of virtual coffees, not in a way that you just contact someone and do it. We've had on MS Teams, we've set up a channel that whenever someone feels like, oh, I want to meet somebody, it sends a message saying, okay, who fancies a coffee? And whoever responds gets in. And you have 2 people, you have 6 people, it doesn't matter. Come together for a short time, interact, and then go. I think the fact that it is unstructured, because everything else has to be structured, this difference here, I think, he's taken out a lot of pressure. Other different aspects like that work as well. Another aspect of remote working that I've found quite interesting is classically, when you're getting external remote help, usually the main reason you're doing that is for cost reasons. So you hire external help from low-cost centers effectively. Now, I'm based in Basel, and only because of COVID, I'm doing remote work for a client in America, simply because of the lockdown, they weren't able to find someone or recruit someone internally to do it. And so the fact that everybody is remote opened the opportunity up for people to look anywhere in the world for the right help, rather than focusing on just getting someone cheap. And this is it's something that we don't really see that much about, but this is very much a very important point that we should all be looking out for in terms of remote work in the future. That the options that it provides are not just for cost cutting, but also improving access to all of the help that you could possibly need, and the right type of help as well.
Absolutely agree, Simon, and really, really great ideas. And I would like to add what Beat suggested. We should plan or schedule espresso sessions with the team, and that's absolutely brilliant. I think we need these unstructured meetings as well. Salman, would you like to add your ideas?
Just briefly, and I see now the pain to go in the end, so you struggle to what you have to say, but
Gracias.
yeah, I'm with you, Martin, here on that. So, but this is one dimension which I would like to go as much as possible before COVID. So I am fan of technology, but I don't want technology to replace all these ways of working here. I like to go from one meeting room to the next one, walking by, looking at some colleagues. So I miss that, and I think there is a value for that. And just to pick a couple of other things. So I think what we tried, and which I think was working, is that you force, if there is anything on discussion and decision making, that should not be more than 5-6 people. And then if it is more information sharing or different parties, then we tried like a conference style idea. You give them people options. So these are different pillars happening. Join what you think you are more interested in, because then you don't have a push but a pull. People go where they feel more interested and comfortable, because the idea, you're not making a decision. So why you want to have 50 people or force them to join the same call? Why not divide those 50 people into 10 groups and they choose their own preference, like we are doing now? You have those panels, anyone can come and then quit afterwards. There is no expectation that you have to be there. So I think that helped also.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And something I also found in my teams um, in the meetings, they went more and more efficient with time. So at the beginning, it was people had technical difficulties joining. There were lots of checks, and we had checks, and still things would go wrong. And now it's more like it has become a part of the game. So everyone is like a Zoom master. Uh, in each meeting, so you can have the facilitation done by anyone, and I think that's a very positive point. Let's move to the next question. How will PPM benefit from all new technology? So technology like artificial intelligence, machine learning, virtual reality. Martine, would you like to start?
Thank you. I think we're switching, Salman. So, yes, uh, I think it's with every technology. It takes away the low key, redundant work. So I think it gives for project management the chance to go away from all the administration part, which sometimes labeled our organization a little bit lower than we would like. So by automating information, data flow, source of information, maybe also the project and the project plan, we can really go to things which are more gratifying, like moderating the team, facilitating discussion, enabling decision making, and looking into strategy. So that's a positive side of, for me, the automatization of a lot of data flow. And I think for our profession, it's a big chance to get to a profile which is far more intellectually challenging, but far more interesting in terms of contribution for the organization. I keep it short. That's it.
Thank you, Martine. Simon, would you like to continue?
Sure. I think there's a lot here in terms of as for automation, for the handling the real admin type of stuff, being able to hold information, present possible scenarios, reduce a lot of paperwork and so on. But it must not be forgotten that all of this work is decision support. The decisions still have to be made by people. You can use all the tools that you like to examine the situation, examine possible outcomes, but decisions have to be weighed up and made by people. And there's no getting around that. And no tool is going to make decisions for you. And the whole purpose of all of this work is to decide what to do. And what I see is that with the introduction of tools, being able to take away a lot of this work that can be done by machines, but so freeing up people so they don't have to do it, it makes it very clear what the people involved actually do have to do. And that is make sense of what's going on with all the support that's there available to you, make decisions, and go with it. I think that is where this really helps in the future, no matter what the tool is.
Absolutely agree, Simon. Salman, would you like to add your thoughts on this?
Yeah, very briefly, I think there was already a journey in terms of PPM. There were two boxes. One is that, all your tools, techniques, forecasts, Gantt charts and all that, these are being more automated. And we see in other industries also, the more and more machines are taking over. So we should not see us any different. We are, I think, bit behind and slow, but it will eventually come. And that, I think, last 1 year or 18 months expedite that path. But then the second bucket, which Simon, you were mentioning, the decision making, I would say, more like emotional intelligence kind of themes that would still be with the human project manager or program manager, to say that. So there will be that combination, but I don't know, the balance, how the balance will lie. But I feel that journey was expedited, and I take it as a positive.
Absolutely, and I see already a lot of automation in PPM tools, and actually I feel that is very helpful, because we should not spend the time on activities which are just to become a reporter. we are actually analysts, and don't become a PM reporter. Be the true analyst who can find insights and really help the organization to go where the organization needs to go. And we have to free up time. And I think all AI technologies at the beginning, they were also learning, so they were not doing the work that well, and so there were lots of complaints. But this is like on any new technology. If you can take the technology like digital photos, Kodak developed it, and they actually never used it for their own products. They sold it to other companies. The reason given by the executive management at that time was that the digital photos will never be as good as analog photos. Look at today, see which kind of photos are you using today. So I think technology, and especially artificial intelligence, learns over time, and things are much better. I can give another example of translation. Who used Google Translate 6 years back, and who is using it now? And if you see the quality of the translation, I'm pretty surprised by how well it's doing it. So I think PPM tools will be more and more intelligent, and that's for the good. With this, we move to the last question: how to address acceptance of user challenges. Simon, would you like to begin this time?
Okay, I think one thing for user acceptance for many areas like this is, especially now during COVID, is again going back to external forces. It's a well-known fact that some things are easy when you've got no choice, and for many of the tools that people are using, and the only way that they can keep in touch with the rest of the organization, they have to use it. It's there is maybe a slowness in uptake, if not used to it, or just a general inherent reluctance to use certain tools. And that's where it's important that so a certain change management part is needed, but in many cases it's more guidance and really understanding user concerns in terms of where problems are with any type of tool they're using, because if one person is forced to use a tool and has a problem with it, then you can be sure that many other people have the same problem but aren't saying anything. So the change management aspect becomes more, for want of a better term, a help desk, really, in getting the user experience working, getting the interactions working properly. Getting people to use the tool is no problem because you have to at the moment. Whether that will change afterwards, that's another story. But for now, it's really just to make it easy.
Yeah. Martine, your ideas on user acceptance?
I think it comes back to what Salman said. I think if you want user acceptance, you have to use tools that are good for the user and bring them benefit. I think tools for the sake of tools is a killer. Tools to help the work you are doing is already first convincing factor. The second convincing factor is you have to learn how to use it properly for what you need. I think we all remember tools who can do 120 things, and you only want them to do 3, but you are lost in 120. So I think you need to select the right tool, you need to select the right feature for the tool, and very simply, you need to make sure people understand and are trained to use it, and maybe do user groups. And for me, that's the key to success if you want people to embrace a change of technology.
Excellent. Thank you, Martine. And Salman, would you like to add your ideas on user acceptance?
Yeah, maybe probably just 2 sentences. I think, make them part of the journey. Don't give them the final solution and ask them to use it. If they are part of journey, present them as a proposal, and if they come along naturally, you will have their buy-in.
Absolutely agree, and I'm so aligned on that. So I can even recommend you one book written by my friend. He's from Germany but based in Poland. His name is Bastian Künzel, And the book is called The Learner's Journey. I can show you. This is how it looks. And actually, it's about using design, learning by design principle in workshops. But these principles can be very much used also for implementing any kind of digital tool. You can make the audience, make the users go through this learner's journey. I loved all the responses, all the insightful answers from the panel. Thank you, Salman, Martine, and Simon. I think we can go on and on about this topic, but this is time for lunch. So let's move and break for lunch. And during the break, there will be still possibility to do the networking. So don't forget to do the networking session. Bye, Simon. Bye, Salman. And Simona, if you want to have a message, please, I give you the floor. So we will be meeting at exactly at 1 p.m. So